sports flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
Reckless speculation.
You want reckless speculation?
You know this ain't gonna happen.
How about reckless trade speculation?
Yeah, it is. This is like peak reckless speculation Thursday, because this is the first Thursday of the NFL league year for those of you who celebrate. And the Vikings are still trying to figure out what they're doing. We're trying to figure out what the Vikings are doing. So we bring in our friend Darren Doogie Wolfson from the 5 Eyewitness News Sports Department and the Scoop Podcast, inside information about your favorite Minnesota sports teams. The news broke this morning that they have indeed converted, didn't they convert part of Harrison Smith's roster bonus to a signing bonus? They clear $6 million in cap space for this year. Danielle Hunter, they got to make a decision on his contract here. They haven't made any offensive line splashy moves yet. So I guess, Doogie, what are the Vikings doing?
Hello, gentlemen. Happy St. Patrick's Day. More importantly for us, I don't have a sliver of Irish blood in me, although I will have an adult beverage or two later today. My TV work ramps up tomorrow. I'm good today. But more importantly for us, happy Reckless Speculation Thursday. Exactly. Harrison Smith did not have to give the Vikings permission to make the move they did. So common sense always said that this move was going to happen. It is interesting how they continue to kick the can down the road. I get it. The salary cap will continue to go up in 23, in 24, in 25. But, like, at some point, you have to stop kicking the can down the road. And Rob Brzezinski is a brilliant capologist. But I'm wondering, like, what the heck are they doing in that regard? I'll give you an interesting angle on all this. I don't know if you guys have brought this up. We are starting to see the Chicago Bears hit the reset button. Look at all the moves the Bears have made.
Yeah.
Ryan Poles, Bears general manager. This is a little bit of conjecture, but Ryan Poles did not come here for that in-person interview, right? Something went sideways behind the scenes. I think we're starting to see that Ryan Poles wanted to strip this thing down here, that what he is executing in Chicago was something he was interested in doing here. And he was not going to get permission to do that here.
Why?
So it was an easy no when the Vikings said, please come to Egan for an in-person interview. It was very easy for him to say, you know what, Chicago is great. You know, I'm 36, 37 years old. Yeah, maybe another opportunity would come down the road. But why not? The Bears want me as general manager. I am taking this Bears job. He would have taken the Giants job if they had offered it. He did have an in-person interview with the Giants. So he wanted to do something like this. We're seeing it in Chicago. So I'm just telling you, we can get to Danielle Hunter in a second, gentlemen, but I'm telling you, Ryan Poles is not the Vikings general manager. Again, conjecture, but I feel confident throwing it out there. This isn't necessarily reckless speculation that he was interested in tearing this thing down pretty good. And he was met with resistance in that regard.
I'm gonna add to that report here. All right, I'll play the reckless speculation sounder, but
Reckless speculation.
But in some of the conversations I've had too behind the scenes, so Kwesi, unlike Ryan Poles, didn't have multiple suitors, right? I mean, Poles has been a finalist multiple times over the last couple of years. You know, it's not like the Vikings were the only team. You can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but Kwesi has had some little dabbles here and there, and his name has popped up. But like, it was either the Vikings or go back to your job in Cleveland.
Absolutely,
most likely, right?
Yes.
So
not most
what
likely,
I have,
no, that was it. Nobody else had Kwesi as a
right.
finalist. Now, maybe
so
somewhere down the road, maybe in a year, 2, 3, 4, but not now. But yes,
Poles what I have heard is that Kwesi essentially had to. And I wasn't in the room for these conversations, but the Wilfs had an idea of how they wanted to proceed forward. They did not want a full rebuild and a teardown. And so even if Kwesi felt like stripping it down to the studs for a minute, and you can rebuild fast in the NFL, even if Kwesi felt like trading Kirk Cousins was the right move, which I believe he did feel that way, the Wilfs didn't want to go down that path. And so if you're Kwesi, you're in kind of a tough spot, and some of this is conjecture, but you're trying to appease the people that hired you and the things that you talked about in the interview process but you're also trying to do right by the franchise and put them in the best position. And I think they're just caught. They're caught in the median. They're caught in the middle here. That's the way I interpret it. What do you think?
I agree. And they've been stuck in the median, at least record-wise, for a really long time. They are stuck in middle purgatory. And we thought with a new regime, we would see that start to change. Maybe we eventually will. But so far, it's a lot of the same old stuff. Now, I'm on record saying you did not bring in a new regime just to roll back the status quo completely. So we've seen some change. We saw Michael Pierce released, even though they tried to rework his contract. They actually wanted to keep Michael Pierce. We may see more, right? We may see a Danielle Hunter trade. I do see Adam Thielen back, a reworked contract. I will be shocked. I'm just telling you. I don't say this lightly. I will be shocked if Adam Thielen is not back in purple, but I don't see Adam Thielen back under his current terms. But yeah, I will say that I foresaw, if you had asked me a couple weeks ago, I would have told you that I foresaw more changes than this.
So if we were to rank the top 5 players on this roster currently, just your top 5, Jefferson's probably one. He's great. Danielle Hunter certainly would fall, though, when healthy, in that list. Like he's above Kirk for sure. There's no question. He's one of the best at his job when he is able to perform it. So that brings us to what I think is a very interesting situation unfolding at TCO right now. And it not only shows a problem between a disconnect clearly between the Vikings and the Hunter camp, but it also shows what sort of feels like a very weird way to work things out, which is, so I'm with Phil. I think that Kwesi wanted to explore trading Kirk.
I agree on that.
But there's
at
a
least
return
explore.
There.
Not necessarily married to the idea of I
right.
need to ship him out, but at least explore, yes.
And the Cleveland scenario has been going on for months now. So, like, this is not new. It just got out that it's irreparable with Baker, but this has been an ongoing. So it's not like the Vikings. I mean, Kwesi worked in Cleveland. He knew exactly what was going on there. The Hunter thing to me, though, is the juxtaposition that's so interesting here when you look at the current situation. Because when you keep Kirk, you are saying we're trying to win right now. Now, I might not agree with doing that, but that's clearly the message. But then it's almost like the Wilfs or the people that laid on the train tracks for Kirk guys are saying, okay, we did that. The Hunter thing is yours now. And because if you turn around, and we had a discussion about this on Purple After Dark last night, at which we were just, and I still am, dumbfounded by what they are or aren't doing. If you trade Hunter, you're basically saying defensively, we're sort of out. Like, I hope we're good, but yeah. So that's where Doogie, the whole Hunter thing to me gets to be incredibly interesting, because if you were working as a cohesive executive front office owner, president, GM, right? You wouldn't divorce the conversations and say, okay, here's what we're doing with Kirk, but on Danielle, here's what we're going to do. And the Hunter camp in itself, too, is a mess, because these people just did a contract and now we're back at the same thing. So it just feels like team-wise and player-wise, there is just a lot of dysfunction at work here.
There's a few things to unpack there. Mm-hmm. I will tell you, Dalvin Cook, Eric Kendricks also among the elite Vikings players. I find it interesting that Kwesi's guy, Andrew Berry, is all in on DeShaun Watson. I did tell you guys last week that there are DeShaun Watson
not anymore. Not anymore as of 5 minutes ago.
Okay, so that changed. Okay.
DeShaun Watson has eliminated the Browns.
Okay, but they were interested. Yeah, I didn't have the latest. That's great information, Phil. Thank you for that. I'm not on Twitter as we're doing this live. I can't multitask quite like that. But Andrew Berry, that's pretty obvious interest in DeShaun Watson. So I find that part of it interesting, that's Kwesi's guy, or at least one of Kwesi's guys. On Danielle, here's what I believe to be true. He's okay playing in a 3-4. I've been saying that for a while. I continue to believe that. he wants more money. This goes back to the Joey Bosa contract extension with the Chargers. When you look at that Bosa contract, I know Danielle, his people looked at that and said, what the bleep? Danielle is a better player when healthy, of course. Health is a part of this equation, but
it's a huge part.
If Joey Bosa is making that, how am I only making this? But yeah, what a moronic contract Danielle Hunter's agent did a couple years ago. That was as bad a contract as it gets. Huge win for Rob Brzezinski and the Vikings. But yes, I look at it and say, Danielle wants more money. And the Vikings are looking at it saying, with the recent injury history, how would we even do this? But you're right. When the Cousins contract news broke on Sunday, all signs pointed to, okay, the Vikings are all in on winning a Super Bowl here in 2022. So that's a contradiction, right? Like if you're all about winning a Super Bowl in 2022, you don't trade Danielle Hunter. Danielle Hunter is here as a Viking, but the conundrum is he wants more money. I do believe that has come up, and I think that's where there's some steam now that, okay, the Vikings need to listen even more intently on some of these trade inquiries. Judd, you had the initial steam on Buffalo. Pretty obvious with them committing all that money to Von Miller that Buffalo was in the market for a pass rusher. Clearly, there are definitely some other teams interested in Danielle Hunter.
Yeah. So to the point that you're making here, into Judd's confusion, I've tried to unpack this since Purple After Dark last night on Purple Daily, that if we all believe, and I think us and then most fans who are watching this believe that this roster is not, as currently constructed, ready to compete for a Super Bowl in 2022. I mean, unless you're hosting a radio show on the flagship or something, and you're rocking your purple from head to toe, like this team hasn't been above 500 in 800 days. And yet injuries happen. The Packers were ravaged by injuries. They still won 12, 13 games or whatever it was, right? So you can't just always hang your hat on, well, if everyone comes back healthy. Well, every team deals with injuries. The great teams have depth to overcome and still, win 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 games. So would anyone disagree with my first point, that this team as currently constructed is nowhere near Super Bowl contention, even with a different head coach?
I agree.
Agreed?
Yeah. I don't disagree. There's no doubt, but they are trying to spin, at least behind the scenes, this narrative that them missing the playoffs 3 of the last 4 years in large part is Mike Zimmer's fault. And
but then, okay, but what about the 4 years before that?
Currently constructed, especially now that Tom Brady is back in the NFC, this roster, we all agree, this roster is not good enough to make a deep January run. By the way, Phil, some of those hosts, at least on the flagship station, I'll tell you, I don't know what they're spewing publicly, but let's just say this off mic, at least one, if not multiple, do not believe this roster is good enough to make a deep January run.
Okay, so they're lying to the audience. That's great. So if we all agree that, no one's saying this, it's a garbage team. I think we all think they're going to compete and maybe, they could be a wild card team, but that's not the bar. The bar is Super Bowl. This franchise averages 8 wins since the Wilfs took over. 60 years, no Super Bowl. So if the bar is Super Bowl, then we all say they're definitely short of that bar. The roster's older now than it was a year ago. So to me, there are 2 options to dig yourself out of this mediocrity. You can continue to go all in, re-sign Kirk Cousins, which they did, bring back Danielle Hunter, cross your fingers on health, and then find other ways to improve the roster via trade or signing. The problem is signings and trades lead to veteran players that cost money, and they don't have a lot of money. Like there are a few $1 million under the cap. There's still some restructures they can do, but they don't have enough money to land impact free agents. The top 8 guards in free agency and the top 4 centers are all off the board. And so, there's really nothing they can do in free agency
Did
to
JC
really
Treader
move.
come off the board, or is he not?
Okay, he has not counting JC Treader. He's still available. So like if you found a way to sign JC Treader and keep Danielle Hunter, okay, now we can start to have a conversation. But to me, like the more logical move would be, okay, let's take a deep breath here for a second. Let's whatever happens in 2022 happens, but let's load up on cap space and draft capital for the next 2 years and open a new window in 2023. And nothing's preventing them from drafting a quarterback in 2023, but they just passed on. We don't know what the exact offers were, but they definitely turned down offers for Kirk Cousins. They haven't, maybe, unless I'm wrong, they haven't been shopping Adam Thielen or Eric Kendricks. Maybe they're starting to shop Danielle Hunter, but again, it's like, if you're going to re-sign Cousins, aren't you committing to competing for a Super Bowl in the next 2 years? And if you're not, why would you not collect all the draft capital and cap space that you can leading into 2023? I don't get it.
I don't get it either. The Wilfs are well within their right, though, as owners, to go down the path that they're going down. But I'm with you. I was very open-minded to stripping this thing down. That when you miss the playoffs 3 or 4 years, there are clear warts. That I would have been okay hitting the reset button. I would have been okay trading Danielle Hunter, trading Kirk Cousins, stripping this thing down. Phil, I don't have any sense that Eric Kendricks has ever been shopped, that Adam Thielen has ever been shopped. So I see both those guys definitely back. But yeah, like I love the 2 quarterbacks at the top of the 2023 draft. No guarantees. I mean, you can try to hit the reset button, still find a way to win 6 or 7 or 8 games, and you're picking 10th, not 2nd. But I love the kid from Alabama. I love the kid from Ohio State. So I was all about going down that path. But the Wilfs just aren't willing to do that. They've owned the team now 17 years. There is no evidence to suggest they are ever willing to go down that path.
Do we know, Dukes? Because I think it's apparent now, and you just broached this, and I haven't heard it talked about a lot, but I think it's worth exploring now. Do we know who exactly decided in that building that Zim was the, for lack of a better term, antichrist of coaching? Like it's a very bizarre pivot to and I get it. You know what? The last 2 years weren't great. He didn't embrace Kirk, and yet he's Mike. He told you, I don't really like this one. So it's not like if they're shocked, oh my God, we thought that Zim and Kirk would work perfect, then they're dumb. But do we know who pivoted from Mike sort of lost his fastball to now everything was Mike's fault? Because to me, that's an organizational blind spot that becomes very dangerous as far as knowing when the timing is to change, to not just change things, but the direction. Like this whole thing of, well, Mike's gone, it's all fixed. That's a very bizarre and in my opinion, completely incorrect notion, because Mike deserves, some blame. Sure, he does. But he wasn't your only problem. That's a ridiculous, if that's the thought, and it certainly appears to be, that's a ridiculous thought.
And was he 4 years ago, he wasn't viewed as a problem. He was viewed as one of the top 6 coaches in the NFL.
Asset.
So it's
asset.
like you can lose your fastball a little bit, but are we really to believe that he was the cancer that prevented the Vikings from going to the NFC Championship game the last 2 years? I mean, did he have kind of a weird, bad relationship with Kirk? And is that a big deal? Yes. But, I mean, look at the top 6 highest paid players on your team. You got a linebacker and a running back in there, and you got a bunch of dudes that are over their football hill, right? And so there's so many more things, to Judd's point, that go into this besides, oh, Mike Zimmer's gone. Onward.
Zim predicted a lot of this 2018 Combine.
Yeah.
He told my colleague Joe Schmidt in a sit-down before week 1 last year, early September, that he did not trust beyond 25 to 26 guys on the 53-man roster. So Zim saw all this coming. Yes, does Zim deserve some blame? For sure. Did him and Kirk have a rocky relationship? 100%. But does Zim deserve all the blame? Heck no. Now, we know, based on Deion Sanders' comments, that Rick Spielman, Mike Zimmer, did not communicate the final couple months. I do know that when Rick Spielman walked into that room on Monday morning, January 10th, he thought he was going to be told, you're back in some capacity, but Mike Zimmer is being fired. I do wonder, mid-December, late December, the conversation Spielman had with the Wilfs, what was relayed about Zim. We know the Andrew Miller COO influence, so there's some conjecture there, but I think, those would be 2 that I'd seriously wonder, especially Rick. Like, I'd like to know what Rick told the Wilfs when he's not communicating with Zim November, December, but he's still communicating with the Wilfs. I wonder what Rick was telling Mark and Ziggy.
Man, I'm just trying to think, like, what can happen in the next couple weeks that would get me to say, okay. I would say keeping Danielle Hunter would be number one, and landing via trade or via signing a J.C. Treader level interior offensive lineman. I mean, if they're going to run this thing back, which again, it's not the path I would have chosen, but if they're going to run it back with one of the top 5 centers in the NFL and get one of the top 5 edge rushers back fully healthy and have an offensive-minded, collaborative coach, all right, I can see it. If you're going to trade Danielle Hunter and you're going to try and make it work with Garrett Bradbury and you're going to waste a full off season of, potentially valuable trades that you could have made and just keep kicking the can down the road, then I don't know, man.
I mean, what if you take the Iowa center at pick 12? I think there's a decent chance he's on the board. That might be a bit aggressive, but What if you take the Iowa center at pick 12? They do have interest in Billy Turner. I'm not suggesting that Billy Turner is Brandon Sheriff. Trust me, the Vikings could have made Brandon Sheriff work. They would have loved to have the former Washington Redskin who's now in Jacksonville, but you look at the contract he got, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, Brandon Sheriff is now the highest paid guard in the National Football League. But
yeah, he definitely had interest in playing close to home unless somebody offered him $17 million a year.
Yeah, in a state with no state income tax. So, they were never able to get into that mix. I mean, they had interest in Austin Corbett, but they were never able to enter that mix based on the contract. I believe he went to Carolina, that Carolina gave him. But there is interest in Billy Turner, the former Mounds View high school stud. And I'm not suggesting Billy Turner is Brandon Sheriff, but if you put Billy Turner at right guard, if you drafted the Iowa center, are you feeling a little bit better about the interior of the offensive line?
But you still have no cornerbacks, basically.
Well, we haven't even gotten to the defense.
Right, but I'm just saying, so yes, I feel, yes, what you just said, do I feel better about the offensive line's prospects? Absolutely. Do I feel good about the team? Absolutely not. That's where I'm thoroughly confused because I can't get to a place where I can see the path or the blueprint to feeling good about the team, which if you had moved on from Kirk, I'm fine with. I'd say, I get what you're doing. Yeah, it's not going to be fun for a year, but I get it. But that's the thing is, I'm trying to make common sense of what we are seeing and not seeing. And in certain places, Dukes, you're right. I can get to a place of, okay, that makes sense. But there are so many gaping holes on this roster. And Ed Donatell's a good guy. And I covered him for 2 years, and he's pretty good at his job. But damn it, he is not a miracle worker, and that's what you're going to be asking him to do. And I don't think that that's fair. I just don't. I don't see how you stop teams with the defenses currently constructed.
There are still a number of cornerbacks still on the board, including guys that Donatell has a connection to, Fuller, Callahan. They have spoken with Patrick Peterson's representative about a possible reunion. I was told no on Casey Hayward. There was a national report linking the Vikings the other day to Hayward.
Sure.
Now, hey, if Casey Hayward is still on the market 2, 3, 4 weeks from now, maybe that can change. But I was told no on Hayward. I was told that they have verbalized to Mackenzie Alexander's representation that there is not interest there in a re-signing. But again, if he's still out there in a month or something like that, they can get him back at a cheap 1-year deal, maybe. But as of now, no interest in retaining Mackenzie Alexander. But yeah, I don't know how you solve the cornerback position. I mean, more likely, I'm throwing out the possibility of drafting the Iowa center at 12.
Yeah, which I'm down for that.
Is it the more likely scenario that they're going to take a cornerback at pick 12?
I mean, any of these things, I wouldn't. If they drafted the Iowa center, if they drafted one of the top 2 or 3 cornerbacks, there are some edge rushers. I'm in on all these.
Well, I'm in on all these. I'll tell you this much: I'm in on Malik Willis. Maybe it's recency bias.
Well, not anymore.
Him from the combine.
Not anymore.
Well, I'm just telling you.
So now it's a waste. It's a waste.
It would be a waste.
Now.
At this point, it would be a waste.
It's crazy to say.
I'm just telling
it's
you, I'm a
waste.
Malik Willis fan. So
Me too.
And I'm not claiming to be a Malik Willis expert. I have not watched one full Liberty game.
Because
okay?
the reason I say
very much recency bias, but I would have been okay drafting Willis at pick 12.
And the reason I say it's a waste of a pick is not because he might turn out to be, an MVP in 3 years, but part of the reason why you draft a quarterback in the first round is so you can get 5 years of paying him nothing. And right now, Kirk Cousins would get to decide who's the quarterback through 2023. So you'd be halfway through Malik Willis's contract before you would take a look at him, unless you're willing to, let's say you draft him and you decide, all right, Kirk, we're going to try and trade you before 2023. And he says, no, I have a no trade clause. Screw you guys. So I guess you can make it awkward, but you've committed. You've committed at this point. So
yeah, you gave him the hammer once again.
I know.
You had the hammer on the trade side of things, and now he's got the hammer again,
so
right?
weird.
With the no trade power.
God.
Yeah, so I agree that it seems unlikely they would take a quarterback in the first round after the news from Sunday with the new Cousins, contract, with him under contract through 23, the 2 voidable years thereafter, so kicking the can down the road. But I think cornerback is probably the most likely position they take in the first round.
Yeah.
I just was throwing out the scenario, though, because I get it. The interior of the offensive line is still a dumpster fire, at least at a couple positions. I do like Ezra Cleveland. But, something needs to happen there. And, by all accounts, this Iowa center is the real deal.
Yeah. So, all right, let's just a couple minutes here of what do you got for Twins? The Twins have been wheeling and dealing. Sonny Gray. They cleared out Josh Donaldson. I like Gio Urshela personally, and there's been a bunch of rumblings that they're not done yet. So, what are you hearing?
All right, well, let's go back to last weekend. So the Yankees are talking to the Rangers about Kiner Falefa. The Twins are talking to the Rangers about him. It's pretty clear the Yankees put Gary Sanchez on the table. Texas was looking for a catcher. It wasn't a tough decision for Texas to say we prefer Garver over Sanchez. So the Twins land Kiner Falefa. When they land him, Phil, they had every intention. I've had this told to me by multiple people. They had every intention of him being their everyday shortstop. They found their new starting shortstop. But then the Yankees call, and the Yankees throw out the idea of, we will take all of Josh Donaldson's contract. Never in a million years did the Twins think that they could shed that entire contract. They always thought, okay, yeah, we can move him, but we need to eat $15 million or, somewhere in that ballpark. The Yankees agree to take the entire contract. At that point, the Twins are like, okay, how do we turn that down? 36 years old. Yeah, Donaldson was good at times last year, but the body breaks down. How can we trust him to stay in the field? We can't pay him all this money, this many millions of dollars for the next 2 years. Yeah. Okay, New York, you want that Donaldson contract? By all means, yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable parting with Kiner Falefa, but we'll do it. So now the Twins are in the market for a shortstop. We know that they've been in daily contact with Trevor Story's representation. But I was told yesterday that market is moving
are they just
slowly.
leaving voicemails? Is it like swingers?
Trevor Story's representation.
But I
think my message might have got cut off. I'm just calling you back.
I know. But here's how I describe the Story situation, though. So now the Red Sox swing and miss on Freddie Freeman. So there's some Red Sox interest, but he'd have to play second base in Boston. He wants to play shortstop.
Yep.
The Astros are trying again on Correa, but if Correa goes somewhere else, then do the Astros make Trevor Story a really nice offer? So he's comfortable waiting for at least a little bit longer, but the Twins remain in constant contact. I can tell you on the pitching front, as of last night, they had not made Michael Pineda or Johnny Cueto an offer. Maybe that changed late last night or this morning. They did make Zach Greinke an offer. And I tweeted yesterday that the Twins made a strong push. Of course, in my mentions, I had about 30 people, if not more, say, same old Twins, make a push, finish runner-up, or don't get the guy. And fair on some guys, I would not use Greinke as an example on that. When you look at Zach Greinke's history of social anxiety, his depression battles, comfort matters to Zach. and his smart agent, Casey Close, is well aware of that putting Zach back in an environment that he is comfortable with, Kansas City, there are still people with the Royals that were there when Greinke was there years ago, that this wasn't about money. Zach Greinke has made how much money in his career?
$300 million.
$300 million. Okay, so 99.9% of the time, money talks loudest. Yeah. In the case of Zach Greinke, it was not about money. The Twins' offer was right there with the Royals, maybe a little bit below $13 million, but the Twins were willing to pay Zach Greinke a lot of money for this year. This was a situation where Greinke, his representation, said he would be much more comfortable in Kansas City than in Minnesota. But do know the Twins tried hard on Zach Greinke. They are maintaining dialogue with the Oakland A's. My sense is they prefer the guy, the right-handed pitcher, Frankie Montas, who's got 2 years of team control versus Sean Manaea, who's got the 1 year of team control.
Montas is going to cost you. I mean, that might. I don't know if it's a Royce Lewis, but it's you're not going to land that dude 2 years of him for anything less than like a top 6 or 7 organizational prospect.
Well, but
and more.
You've got Austin Martin, right? So do you need Martin and Lewis? So would you be willing to part with one of those? You have a bunch of outfielders too, right? Like, do you need all those young outfielders? Like, could you part with, I don't think they want Kepler, but would you part with Larnach? Because you do have Kepler under team control for multiple more years, right? Kirilloff can play outfield if need be. I think he's better off at first base, but you can put him in the outfield. So, like, you could move Larnach if Oakland was tempted by that.
Yeah. Good stuff. Wow, that's a great start to the Reckless. I think the Reckless Speculation League year also started today, just so everyone knows.
Reckless
This week is absolutely fantastic. I love this week.
Oh, it is. There's so much stuff going on. Like, we didn't even get into Michael Pierce. Like, they went to Pierce and said, we'll lop off a year of your contract, 2023, so you can hit unrestricted free agency 1 year from now. We won't have you under control for 2023. But, like, he was reluctant to agree to that, thinking, okay, so we're moving to a 3-4 base. Like, how exactly do I fit into that? Okay, I can fit in, but what about the people around me? Will I be able to shine with those around me? Like, I don't know if I like this. So I would rather choose unrestricted free agency now than a year from now, even though, he entered unrestricted free agency, 24 hours into the thing. So some teams already gobbled up some interior defensive linemen, but the Vikings did make a push to retain Michael Pierce. He was the one who said, please release me.
Yeah. Dukes, great stuff. Thanks, stuff. Doogie. You are on your A game as always.
Yeah, and the Vikings did not make an attempt. I was texting with Tyler Conklin this morning. The Vikings did not make any attempt to retain Tyler Conklin.
Okay. Conklin, nice little $7 million a year paycheck for him. Good for that guy, man. He seems like he's a good player, good guy. So, all right, Doogie, find him on 5 Eyewitness News, the Scoop podcast. We'll see you next week.
Okay, sounds good, boys. See ya.
All right,
Bye, Darren.
Real quick here, boys. A couple things. This amazing session of Reckless Speculation presented by our friends at Federated Mutual Insurance Company. They have been helping business owners for over 100 years. Just a great culture there. You talk about collaboration and culture with the purple. Oh, yeah. They make sure that their representatives at Federated aren't just, going in blind here. They go through several months of training in Owatonna before they get assigned to regional offices throughout the country, specializing in core industries that they know and understand front and back, rather than trying to sell as many policies as possible. They specialize in your industries. You can find a full list at federatedinsurance.com. And remember, at Federated, it's our business to protect yours. Now, no, Judd, Judd just hit me up via text, and let's talk about it right now real quick, and then we'll get to some Timberwolves stuff.
Oh, sure.
So while we were doing the scoop session, the Browns were informed by DeShaun Watson's camp, hey, you guys are out, sorry. So now they have to go back and clean up this Baker Mayfield mess. Baker sending out that Instagram post.
I don't think they're going to. I think they're done with him.
Now they have said the word coming out now, and they have to do this to like save face and value, is that Baker they are committed now to Baker Mayfield, et cetera. And we've fielded some questions from Vikings fans. Well, hey, I mean, the Browns and Vikings were engaged in discussions. Couldn't you just go? And I know that Kirk signed a contract, but couldn't you go back and say, hey, you can get Kirk for 2 years. We just signed him. Maybe he'll waive the no-trade clause to go back and play with Kevin Stefanski. Well,
it's not going to happen.
I'm looking up the contract details here. The way that they've structured this Cousins contract by loading, there's the Vikings are on the hook. However it's arranged, we don't need to get into how a sausage is made. The Vikings, I believe, would be on the hook for $80 million in dead cap for 2020. Like you wouldn't.
Yeah,
you wouldn't be saving any money at this point because you just locked in.
Yeah.
And even for next year, they'd be on the hook for almost $50 million in dead cap.
You'd be killing yourself. You wouldn't do this.
And he has a no-trade clause. So you have committed full on to 2 more years of Cousins.
Yes.
There's no discussion about a trade anymore.
2 more years. 2 more years. Yeah, this is because I got that note last night and then a couple more times today. And it's a logical question. Hey, Kirk, you can play for Stefanski. You love him, right? But I went to over the cap then and put in what you just did, Phil, and realized it is what we like to call a non-starter in the game.
Yeah, and with all of these, it's funny how life comes at you fast in the NFL because when he restructured 72 hours ago, and even we were kind of saying this, okay, at least it's not what we would do, but it helps the Vikings get some cap relief. It lowered his cap hit $14 million for 2022, and it helps the team. Well, you can't just evaluate the Vikings in a vacuum and what they're doing. It has to be relative to the other 31 teams they're competing against, and all of those teams also have the power to restructure contracts and clear space and everything, right?
Right.
So now that other teams have done restructures, and Wentz was traded, and Rodgers and Russell Wilson was traded, and his cap hit's lower now with the Broncos, et cetera.
Right.
Kirk Cousins, as of right now, has the 5th highest cap hit of any player in the NFL, even after the restructure.
Yep.
And I'm assuming that when DeShaun Watson gets traded, probably to the Saints today, they're going to redo his deal. So he's going to go from 40 down to whatever, and they've cleared a bunch of space. Matt Ryan is probably next. So by the time it's all said and done, there's a good chance Cousins, even after the restructure, will still have one of the 3 or 4 highest cap hits of any player in the NFL this year.
Yep. And also, let's keep in mind that before we get too excited about the fact that I believe they freed up approximately $6 million by restructuring Harrison Smith's contract. It was interesting, and it's semantics, but it's very important. It was interesting yesterday that in the press release announcing the agreements that have been reached, it doesn't say signed yet because those guys weren't signed yet. They actually had to, I think, do the Smith restructure to sign the guys that they announced that they had quote unquote agreed to terms with. So that's not a bunch of extra money now that can they do something. That literally is before they hold the press conference today at which they're going to introduce Jordan Hicks and Phillips. That is so that those guys can even sign their contracts.
Yeah.
So this does not, there's not a lot of extra now or a potential just flat out $6 million floating around. It's still, I would say, nip and tuck as far as the salary cap goes.
Yeah. So we continue to watch and wait and see on some of these big Vikings decisions. They've dabbled in free agency, but I think the Danielle Hunter thing is probably the elephant in the room that they're trying to shove out the door one way or another.
I don't understand from both sides how we are into the free agency period now, second official day, and this is a problem again.
It's crazy.
How is this not resolved? And quite frankly, Phil, so the Hunter camp agreed to the contract, if I'm not mistaken, last spring, right? They were ticked off. They didn't like the contract. He was supposedly, possibly, or not possibly, he had basically said, I'm not going to show up for your off-season camps unless I've got a new contract. 11th hour going into those camps, it got done, or eventually got done. Okay. It's done. Now you're telling me as free agency starts now, it's basically the same problem? That's not excusable. That's terrible. That's terrible from both sides. Figure it out.
Well, and it's different. It's different people that are making these decisions now on the Viking side. So it's the same problem, but for new people looking at the problem. But obviously, it's dragging on.
I guess my point is, the Hunter camp always intended to make this a problem again. And this whole thing of, just convert the roster bonus to a signing bonus and smooth things out. Clearly, there's something we don't know because that's the common sense move, and it's not been made.
Yeah.
So anyway, just frustrating to watch this whole thing unfold.
Reckless speculation.
All right, let's take a breather here real quick and talk about the Wolves putting an old Lakers team out to pasture last night in glorious fashion. Mackey and Judd.